Good afternoon, everybody. Bernie Floresca here from Career Services with Emily Ginger. We are in the weekly business relations strategist call, teaching you how to reach out to connections using LinkedIn to people that you do not necessarily know, hence the term cold. So you're trying to reach out to cold contacts, creating connections with those cold contacts and creating relationships so that they could possibly be resources to you in your job search. So the first thing that I want to cover is information from the index. We want to review this so that the new listeners or people new to the concept, like Dimitri and Vicky, will understand what's going on. So we have Dimitri, we have Manoj, we have Antoinette, and Vicky. So Dimitri and Vicky are new to the concept. Antoinette has been plugging in regularly, weekly, either via the recordings or attending in person, and so has Manoj. So what you are seeing on the screen is the Illinois Tech Career Services group on LinkedIn. So I want to point your attention to the index, which I like to call the student's best friend because it's available to you 24/7 with information about job search. So the index is a comment in any of the posts. So just keep going until something like this shows, or you can open up the comment, but I'm scrolling into previous content. This one shows. So what you're seeing on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call the index. So this was not intended as an index. It used to be a collection of links that were follow-up to career services appointments. However, when we started sharing the links with students, they were like, oh, great information, wonderful information. So we had to find a way to make it an index. And the way that is the topics are indicated by the hashtag. So you have hashtag alumni, and the topics are alphabetized, hashtag business relations, et cetera, all the way to the end of the document. We have hashtag resume, hashtag interview, et cetera. So the topic for today, since this is a part of the weekly business relations meeting, is under hashtag business relations. So for the new folks, I want you to pay attention to bullet number 3. Okay, it says connect code, connect practice, and connect messaging. I am going to the connect cold messages that you see, and I'm going to start this discussion for the new people with what you're seeing under connect cold 1. Further down, it says wrong way 1. So I'm going to ask a question of Dimitri and Vicky for their opinion. Okay, so just a background for what you're about to see. The person on the screen is a hiring manager, data science manager at a big company, no other than Google. And this hiring manager, Nithya, just posted an ad on LinkedIn. And this actually came out of one of the business relations meetings. And the student actually wrote Nithya a message, and this was the content. So for the new folks, I just want to see an indication. Dimitri and Vicky, why do you think this is, I called it wrong, but the more accurate way to describe this is it's inefficient. So Dimitri or Vicky, any thoughts as to why this type of message in this particular situation is ineffective? No idea, Dimitri? I see you're attempting to say something.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Um,
I suspect
maybe
why
it's a little informal. I don't know.
informal. Maybe
Um,
not. Okay, remember the background that I gave you. This hiring manager from Google just posted a job ad,
mhm.
and then this student thought to send a message to this hiring manager. Okay, first question
This is
to,
not one size.
pardon?
This is not like it is look like a professional. We need to first talk to them, then we friendly, then we need to talk about the jobs to them.
They need to talk about the jobs.
Yeah, later. First, we need to connect with them like a friendly manner. We need to talk to them.
Okay. So I think I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. I go back to the situation. Part of what you guys are being taught is to read the situation. I said, this is a big company. This hiring manager just posted a job ad. So question to you guys, how many of these types of messages do you think are in Nithya's inbox at the moment if they just posted a job? Dimitri,
Yes,
hundreds,
probably
right?
100.
Hundreds, right? So everybody's pretty much saying the same thing. So I see what you were thinking earlier, because what the student wrote in this message to this Google manager is very intuitive. And since it's intuitive, everybody's thinking of saying the same thing. Okay. So Vicky kind of like was directing us a little bit, saying that, he had some ideas about what was being said. But in general, when somebody has an ad without conversations like we're having today, this is what people are sending. But it's inefficient because number one, the company is really huge. Number two, this manager just put out a job ad. And number three, this manager's inbox is currently flooded with similar pieces of information. Does it make sense? Questions, anybody? So that's
I have
why,
a comment, Bernie.
go ahead, please.
Even though I'm not a hiring manager, so my LinkedIn is not flooded with messages. Mine just trickle in here and there.
Mhm.
I'd have a hard time responding to this. It's too much for me to read. It's too long.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. So it's like it's like I paid Emily to say what I'm about to show. So Emily said that it was too long even for somebody's inbox. And Emily was saying that even if she doesn't get flooded with messages, that was too long to begin with. So message design principles. This is what I wanted to cover. Your messages should be short, to Emily's point. I actually want to qualify that further and add the adjective uber short. Is it uber short? Because short seems to be relative. Hi, Chinmay. Welcome to the call. So feel free to jump in. I'm just going over the message design principles. Actually, Chinmay, are you able to speak?
Hello.
Hi, Chinmay.
Hi, Bunny. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I was just going to request some of the more senior participants in this call from the perspective of knowing this information, share what I'm sharing with the group. Can you share, because I know you've been applying this stuff to your outreach. So between you and Manoj, I was asking to do the same thing, but he kind of got tied up. So Chinmay and Manoj, could you go over these message design principles and share your knowledge, even based on your experience, because you guys started reaching out to people. Go over the design principles, please. Take it away.
I'll just go through. Manoj, can you begin?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead.
So
Yeah,
message
so
design principles, please.
sure. From the principles of like message design on LinkedIn, like as you can see, like it should be short, and you should frame it in such a way that it gets a response. My experience of it as like initially I was starting out with like questions, because questions kind of help like people, like because if you ask someone a question, like people are naturally likely to respond to it. Like that was like something in human psychology that I figured would work. So I started out with like asking questions, and my results have been that like I've at least been able to connect to a lot of people. And I think that is better than like something Bernie showed you earlier, where it's like you're just writing something that is like too long for them to read, and it becomes an email basically. And you don't want to like flood them with so much information, and you just want to like take it slowly. And I think to our discussions earlier. It's just like how you make a new friend in essence, and it's like you wouldn't like directly start asking them like yeah, it's the first time you're talking to them, and it's like, for example, you wouldn't ask like, can we hang out or something like that. So you would like take it like in a slow pace. So I think the similar principles apply, and as long I think something important that like I've realized or I've found is like just avoiding asking favors, because it's like even though like in some cases when like people start talking to you, it's like I remember Bernie saying this to us in like the earlier session, like don't be an ingrate or like don't go directly for the neck, and like just like slowly like build an organic relation first and then ask for something, because like once you build an organic relation and like people know that you're coming like from a genuine place and up, as opposed to like you're just reaching out to them for something. So I think that it like things work better, because like I've had an example like very recently, like where I had been to a conference, and someone had like someone reached out to me and asked about the slides, because they saw my post about the conference and like the write up, and I said I didn't have it. And like even like just from that, like I was able to ask them about like the company where they were working at, and I was able to like talk to them about like for example, like even when I asked them, I was like whether how I framed it eventually was like I just said I noticed that there are these positions at your company. uh do you like could you do you know like anyone who's at this position? Because like I didn't want to give them more work in essence and ask them for a referral, because that would be like too direct. And like they were kind enough, and they were like they told me like the potentially the positions I could apply for as well. Like there was an internship position and there was like a full-time position. And like even though and they got back to me and they said they would have like a word with the HR as well. And like even though I didn't get call, like she at least told me that they were looking for people who were around, like for example the company was in Minnesota, so they were looking for people around that area, and that was the reason why it was rejected. And I did mention that to her that I would be open to relocate, and she did communicate. But like the point is like sometimes like things can just happen like organically, because like our conversation just started off like sharing slides. So it's like I would just say in a sense like just be open to learning, because I think what is emphasized a lot in the business relations is like the advantage we have as students. Because like for example, if Bernie or Emily were to call someone, like it would be like pure business, right? Like they would say like we are from career services, and it would be like something related. But for us, it's like we have like various angles to talk about. Like for example, like if you don't know like where to start from, like you can just start with like an alumni, and you can talk about like a subject that you both have in common, and you could ask them like how was their experience with the subject. And I think like people are more naturally to relate to something that they've done. So I think what I've learned a lot through this business relations is just like understanding like the different situations of like how to approach people and like how to reach out. And I think a lot of like reading the situation in a sense, because like every situation is not the same.
Very good. That was quite a lot, Manoj. Thank you for sharing. Chinmay, did you want to add to that? And stand by, Dimitri and Vicky, because I want you to ask questions or tell me what you digested or what you got from what Manoj just shared. And now Chinmay, in addition to what Manoj said. So I want to hear what Dimitri and Vicky get out of what Manoj and Chinmay are sharing. So go ahead, Chinmay.
Yeah, so it's more or less similar to what Manoj said. Adding up to it, I think the whenever you approach directly on LinkedIn, and or whenever you approach in a face-to-face kind of a meet, the approaches are different. Um, LinkedIn is more professional, I would say, or even someone you have not connected earlier. Whom I connected on LinkedIn were basically of my skill set, or or similar position, I would say. So I asked them their experience, their journey, and after building a kind of a relation with them, staying in touch with them like frequently, and so happened to get like one or two references, like, I've shared my resume, they said that they'll be referring in their offices. So I basically target to someone having my skill set and with similar kind of experience, the number of years of experience I'm talking about. And but when you happen to meet a person face to face, it's completely different. They know you personally, not everyone remembers you, but I make a point that, after attending an event or a workshop, I just go to home. I mean, I connect either on LinkedIn or mail them on the very next day or the same day if possible, so that they kind of remember you. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
very good,
that's
Chinmay.
kind of my approach. Yeah.
Awesome. So Dimitri and Vicky, Manoj and Chinmay obviously have been doing this stuff. So let me bring that back to what you're seeing on the screen. The way that Manoj and Chinmay start the conversation is they need to open the door, so to speak. So what you're seeing on the screen is talking about your message design principles. So when you open the door initially, it is your opening line short. Doesn't have to be uber long compared to what you saw earlier. And then number two, the reason we're called business relations strategists is because we have to be very strategic in what we say, in that the second bullet point says that is it worded to expect a response. And the reason you want to do that is because you are actually laying the foundation for a text-like exchange. You say something, they say something, you say something, they say something. And if you have a message like the original one that we showed that was inefficient, you kind of get the door slammed in your face. They never open it. So the whole strategy of what we're talking about is your first message is critical, because you're just opening the door, and then you have to be very strategic in what you say, because like Manoj said, he likes asking questions. Okay. That's not close-ended. Okay. Because they can still not answer the question, but Manoj is more likely to get a response versus him just making a statement. So the design principles that you're seeing on the screen are essentially the groundwork, the foundation of what we talk about. Is it short? Is it worded to expect a response? And lastly, if it's the very initial contact, do not make a request of a stranger. Because think about it, Dimitri, if I met you on the street and I say, hey, Dimitri, can you lend me $10? And you're like, who the heck is this guy, right? Kind of like has the same effect in your messages. You're a stranger, reaching out on LinkedIn and say, hey, Dimitri, I understand you're a hiring manager. Can we spend 15 minutes at a time so I can like ask you some questions? Kind of strange, right? It's not your opening line. And that's why we talk about create the business relationship first and then make a request once you read the situation and that you feel that there is some rapport. So based on Manoj's sharing, and I'd like to hear what Vicky and Dimitri got out of the sharing so far.
Took some like notes. So what I wrote was keep it short. It's not an email. It's supposed to be a dialogue. Like Manoj said, asking questions is a very good way to start that dialogue. Don't try to rush it. So just kind of take a slow pace. Um, like Mr. Floresca said, don't ask for a favor right away off the bat. Try to make it more organic. And then I think it was Chinmay.
Mhm.
I don't know if I said that right,
Yes, you
but
did.
they were saying that try to target people with similar experiences, so then you can kind of have a um some sort of connection already that you can kind of nurture and expand, and make sure you're keep that contact con try to keep constant contact, and always follow up, because then it kind of shows that you actually care and are genuine.
Yeah, very good. Manoj actually alluded to that earlier. He was saying that it is the exercise that we're doing is akin to making friends. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody on this call has friends. And I would assert that all these friends that you have today were at one point strangers. So how did they come from becoming strangers to your friend or even best friend? Some process had to occur, which is what we're trying to mimic with the back and forth that you're doing on LinkedIn. Okay. So that's why we said in the beginning, you don't just go up to a stranger and say, hey, you do me a favor off the bat, which is essentially what people are doing. So how about Vicky? Was there anything else to add? That was pretty comprehensive, Dimitri. Thank you. Vicky, anything
Yes,
to
sir.
add?
Yes, sir. We need to talk to first. Like it should be short,
Short,
and also, yeah, and also we need to talk to them like naturally conversations, like
like
not
natural
about
conversation.
the, yeah, and also the not about the job roles.
Well, not immediately.
Yeah,
Okay.
got it. Yeah,
Because
yes,
for
I
you
got it.
guys, your intent is really for them to help you with job search. We're just
Uh,
saying do not immediately start
yeah,
talking about the job. So very good. I just had to make that distinction, Vicky.
yeah,
What else?
and also after building a hope to them, after we building a hope to them, like a friend or not like a stranger.
Yes.
After then, we can talk about the job roles, all the things.
Yes.
So,
Then we're showing you how to transition your
yeah,
conversation from building a relationship to getting essentially not just jobs, but pretty much anything that you want. Okay. And Manoj
yeah,
gave you an example earlier. He was just talking about slideshows that they were having. What you're learning are really the fundamentals to get whatever it is that you want. But our application at the moment is finding jobs. Okay. Before I proceed, I actually want to acknowledge Chinmay publicly because when we started this initiative, when did we start this? Like a couple of months ago? The whole intent was so that you guys, our students, could use business relations information to reach out to companies. Okay, it was an exercise to reach out to companies, and you had the excuse of inviting them to the career fair. So, to Vicky's point earlier, where you don't talk about jobs immediately, we want to talk about inviting them to the career fair. But what happened was Chinmai, in the exercise of reaching out to companies, uh, I assume that she made some connections that are going to benefit her in her job search because now she knows how to connect and she's growing these relationships. So that being said, I'm inviting Chinmai to share some other benefits that she has gotten out of going through the exercises. Chinmay invited two companies actually to our career fair, but I want to hear the bigger picture from Chinmay's perspective because she did this not necessarily to invite companies to the career fair, but to expand her horizon of connections. Chinmay, please share.
Yeah, Bernie, definitely, like you said. So it's actually a part of my practice that, whatever task has been assigned to me or whatever work has been assigned, I see to it that, I take the accountability or the ownership and, get it done somehow. So while attending the events and the workshop in the cities, which is going around currently, so I mean, definitely I pitched my skills first, like what I'm good at, just having basic conversation with the companies. Later, when I was done, then I actually, asked them out that if, they would be interested in coming to IIT for the career fair. And it would definitely, enhance the relationship because apart from just as a job seeker, they would see me as someone who is working for the university as well to get the companies in. So that was the understanding, and yes, I could, possibly talk to companies and feel that who all would be actually interested. I targeted those companies. I mean, not really Microsoft or the big firms
Mhm,
because they don't easily get back to you, right?
mhm.
So.
But I assert, Chinmay, that some of the skills that you learned in reaching out
Mhm.
to some of these other companies will apply when you reach out to those big companies. Would you
Okay.
agree?
Yeah, definitely.
So what specifically do you think that
Mhm.
you have learned and applied would apply when you pretty much go out into the world and not necessarily care? Because this time you're like, okay, I'm not inviting them to the career fair now. I'm
Mhm.
inviting them to be friends so that they could help me find a job. So what do you think, what benefits have you gotten so far that
Mhm.
would help you when you foray out into the wider world out there?
I think firstly would be confidence talking
Very
to
good. Very good. That's huge.
yeah, and yeah, mainly that, and having the right approach, like
Mm.
how to present ourselves, so that one can remember us.
So
Because
right approach.
right approach. Because
Okay.
I attended events wherein Microsoft had come. I'm specifically like speaking about that company because I attended events twice, and in those two events, Microsoft was there. So now the lady, the HR who was present in both the events, she knows me personally.
Knows you
So
personally.
yeah, because
Okay.
every time I made an effort to reach out to her and connect on LinkedIn, but I don't know how it is going to work.
No, that's beautiful. So I think you are seeing a snapshot of how what you're being taught works. You start by opening the door, and then you repeatedly have a conversation with them, make it organic or whatever. But when we say business relations, the key to that is the relations part. So you know that even with your friends, don't you just hate friends who come to you only when they need something? Okay. So don't be that type of friend when you're creating
Mm.
these relationships, in that it's always like, help me, help me, help me. Can you give me a referral? Can you look at my resume? Try to
Mm.
give back to them as well. If they're posting on LinkedIn,
Okay.
you could send them a message saying, hey, I like what you posted on LinkedIn. Give them your idea. These are all other ways of strengthening that relationship, to Chinmai's point. So because of the constancy of contact, if you will, some sort of relationship organically showed up. And to her point, she's at a better place than had she created those actions. Did I capture that correctly, Chinmai?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Any reactions from anybody else on the call? Questions?
So
Reactions?
I was wondering how, if you do reach out to a company with like the, pre- I don't want to say pretending, but like kind of pretending that you just want to invite them to the career fair. If they accept, like, how would you go about actually making that happen?
Yeah. Actually, very good question, Dimitri. That's actually our problem at Career Services. So to answer your question, after Chinmai made that connection, she kind of like reached out to me. So I connected Chinmai with Nick and Lisa, and they're the people who actually talk to these employers. So
Mm,
that's kind of like out of your hands. But the whole
okay.
reason we invited students to reach out to companies is, number one, it's good practice. As you're noting, Chinmai is getting all this practice now. So if she goes to her Google spreadsheet now of her true target companies, she already claimed it. She said she has the confidence. Number two, she knows the framework. Okay, the message design principles. Start it being short. When you talk to them, talk strategically. Make sure that when you're saying something, that you're expecting a response, and then never make the initial contact. So you're seeing how this framework kind of comes into play. Okay, having students practice inviting companies out to Illinois Tech is just one application of what you're being taught. So without an application per se, students could essentially, like you, Dimitri, right? You could just make a list of mechanical engineering companies, like you and I spoke about earlier. I mean, that was just one company, but you could have a list of 10 companies. You start researching them on LinkedIn, and then kind of like what Chinmai said, as they're looking for all those employees in those companies, Chinmai's strategy was to find people of the same skill set, or that was alum, or something in their profile that piqued her interest, such that when she opens up a conversation, a background of relatedness already exists, which is going to fuel the back and forth as you're creating the relationship. Make sense?
Yeah.
More on that, Dimitri? Was that good?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay. Anybody else have any reactions? Otherwise, I'm going to invite Chinmai to probably share some outreach message. And if we don't have anything to talk about, Antoinette. Oh, Ivan, I didn't even see you join the call. Welcome to the call, Ivan. Ivan, Antoinette, Chinmai, Manoj, did you have any? The reason we're having these weekly calls is, as you learn the basics, the learning is actually in the application. So sure, we told you the message design principles, but the learning is really when you apply it and then people ghost you or people get stuck or you don't know how to handle this situation. That's why we have these weekly calls so that we can essentially hold your hand as you are asking those questions. So that's why I was asking if Manoj, Chinmay, Antoinette, and Ivan have any cases where they got stuck so we can address it today. I can give them feedback. Plus, we have a whole team of people now with other ideas that could move everybody forward. So I open up the floor. I know Manoj said earlier that he wanted to focus on email a little bit earlier, but Manoj, you realize that's a little bit more advanced. You and I can talk about it on the side if we didn't have enough time for today, but any sample messages where people got stuck during the week? Ivan, Antoinette, Chinmay, and Manoj. If not, I'm going to address email because Manoj spoke up. Vicky and Dimitri, have you reached out to folks on LinkedIn before?
No, I just
No?
kind of apply to companies, but
So you just apply to companies, but there's no personal relationship that you start with messaging. Okay, no. Anybody else have
Same.
any?
No, sir. No.
Okay,
I
none for
haven't.
Vicky either. Okay. How about I start while you guys are thinking? I will go to one of the examples that you see. We have 20 more minutes. I want to give enough information to Vicky and Dimitri so they can go out and start applying this. So back in the index under hashtag business relations still, okay? Under hashtag business relations, I'm going to the 3 groups of messages. Let me cover this now. I think you guys know enough for the new folks. Connect cold, connect practice, and connect messaging. If you notice, there are 3 groups of messages. Connect cold, connect practice, and then connect messaging. The first group of messages, connect cold, are ideas as to how to reach out to strangers. Okay. And we came up with wrong way 1. I'm going to cover Steve Dalton shortly, but let me tell you what connect practice and connect messaging are. Connect practice are people who were vetted that you could practice what you're being taught on this call. So we know who these people are. You can reach out to them and practice what you're learning. So once students got through Connect Cold and Connect Practice, they were actually making connections. And then the usual question was, what the heck do I say now? Okay. And that's the purpose of the third group of messages, connect messaging. So that part that I told you earlier, to Vicky's point, where he was talking about create the relationship first, and then how do I switch into talking about me now, and that if they could possibly help me find a job. So I won't talk about it now, but it's connect messaging 12. It's called transition. And if there are any questions for the people on this call or the people listening to the replay of this call, if you have any questions about this, I'm a LinkedIn message away. And that's why I encourage everybody to connect with me directly on LinkedIn. You could ask me the questions if you're stuck. But let's cover one specific case. Steve Dalton is the author of the book, 2-Hour Job Search. Okay. And I didn't know that he was invited to to Illinois Tech. He was invited a couple of times. I saw his book in my boss's office one day, and I just decided I wanted to reach out to him, practice what I preach. I pretty much reach out to anybody on LinkedIn using the same strategies that I'm talking about to you guys. Number 1, it's got to be short. Number 2, it's got to be strategically worded to expect a response. And number 3, do not make any requests. So Steve Dalton, the first message is what I sent Steve. Notice how it was very short. So I want reactions starting with Dimitri and Vicky. Why was my message effective? And it was effective because number 2, Steve responded and he accepted my connection request. And he actually said more than I said in my initial message. Why do you think my first message, which was, hey, Steve, saw your book in my boss's office, smiley face, just read a summary. That's all I sent. Okay. In contrast to that long message that we saw earlier, what was the wrong way to send the message? So reactions from Dimitri and Vicky first, but anybody else actually can give me reactions. Why was the first message effective?
I think you appeal to his ego. Like
Very
it feels
good.
good to get recognized. And
So you see how I was being strategic, right?
yeah.
All right. Appeal to the ego. What else?
Um, the smiley face makes it kind of more friendly
It's
and
made it more friendly. Very
more
good.
like a conversation.
Yes.
And also like when you put an emoji, it kind of changes the tone in which you read the message. Because when you're just reading, you can't really tell how someone's like saying it,
Yes.
but the emoji kind of helps to understand the intent behind the word.
Okay. Very good. Emoji is subjective. I would suggest that anybody listening to this call, it's you who's presenting yourself to the other party. Okay, so you inject your personality and your writing style. Some people might say, you're being too informal. Well, that's up to you. It's your call, but I find it effective for myself because in person, that's my personality. Feel free to inject your personality into the way that you write. Very good. Dimitri, anything else to add to that? Or Vicky or anybody else?
Yeah, I think just by you're complimenting, just to add to like the ego thing, you're also complimenting him, and you said you read a summary,
Yes.
which shows that like you're reaching out to him after like reading the book, and you said like saw your book, so it's like you're reaching out to him after that, and you're like just read a summary, and like since he had multiple books as well, like
Yes.
he was more curious about like which book did you read and like which
Exactly.
one. Yeah.
And honestly, when I wrote that message, I didn't know he had multiple books.
Yeah.
And also, to your point, you were under the impression that I read the book. I didn't. I just saw it in my boss's office, and that was it. I didn't read it, but he could have assumed that I read it. So that's all part of the strategy because I designed my message such that I was expecting a response from Steve Dalton. And you notice that it worked because he said even more than I did. Guys learn anything? So was that enough segue for anybody to give us a case study for their messages that they had? Otherwise, I'm going to quickly, in the last 14 minutes, go over email that Manoj asked about. Going once? All right, nothing else about that. I'm going to go back to the email, connect code to email. Any questions, please feel free to stop me. But Manoj, to your question about email, the difference between email and LinkedIn messaging is, what do you say, Manoj?
Yeah, I think for email it is like you have the subject aspect of it, and like that
Very
is
good.
what they read at the beginning, like compared to the LinkedIn where you like have a snippet and you have like slightly more space for them like to start off with something.
Yes. So what you're seeing on the screen was me reaching out via email. So tell me what strategy I used to be, number one, to be open. I used two strategies, actually. What you're seeing on top is the subject. So when you're sending messages via email, you have the subject to contend with. So I use two specific strategies in the subject that you're seeing on the screen. So I want the group to tell me what strategies I used.
I think you correlated with something that with the information you already have, so that it's like in the subject from subject itself, it's clear that like there's a correlation or it's from someone from career services. In this example, since you said
Yes.
that BJ said you worked with us at career services, so she
Yes.
knows that like I mean, since you BJ said that, so that also implies that you are working there. So I think it kind of just like opens up the floor for
Very
you.
good.
Yeah.
Very good. So you actually give me a third point to imply that it was at career services, but I used name dropping BJ was a common connection. So I made sure to use BJ's name in the subject because that is going to spur some interest to her. And I would raise the chances of her opening up my email because I mentioned the name of somebody that we both knew. Okay. Very good catch. What's the second one? Nobody? Come on, guys. It's very
You
obvious.
kept it very short.
No, still with the subject.
Oh, the subject.
Guess what I used? What is music to a person's ears? They teach you this when you're talking to a person. You always use what, Dimitri?
Her name. Her name.
Exactly. So in your subject, part of my strategy is to use their name in the subject line. Because when you see your name, you gravitate towards it. So I use two things, Yunwen's name and BJ. I was name dropping. And then the same things apply in the message. And again, I want to reiterate that it's about reading the situation. What I sent in this particular email was quite short, and it may or may not be appropriate for the situation. In this case, for whatever I was up to connect with Yunwen, this worked. Just by saying your fourth was good. Because when you give well wishes, let's just say I met Dimitri out in the hallway and I say, hey, Dimitri, hope your fourth was good. What would you do? Dimitri, if I ask you that question in the hallway?
Thanks, you too.
Yeah. So you see how it's kind of like designed to get a response. Questions? I suspect Manoj may have further because he's starting to get into email.
Yeah, so I was just curious, like because in the case of emails and like from that site you said we get the email for companies. Like I was just thinking like the subject thing makes sense of like reading the room and like according to the situation. But let's say like it is like someone we have not talked to before and
Mhm.
like we're emailing them. So like let's say it's a recruiter at some company that is potentially I want to work at X and it's like you're reaching out to them. So from a and let's say like for example like just for practice purposes we are
Mhm.
just using like the career fair because we still have time to invite companies.
Mhm.
So what would you say like would be an effective like subject for that?
Okay, so let me just lay the groundwork so everybody can give suggestions based on Manoj's question. Okay, so Manoj is saying that he's going to use email to invite a company, totally cold. He wants to invite a company to come to Illinois to our career services. Was that the situation, Manoj?
Yes.
All right. So we already know the first one in the subject line. You're going to use their name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other part, we may not have a third party connection where I can name drop.
Yeah.
So what could you say? What is Manoj or anybody else on this call thinking to use as an effective subject line? We already gave you the first one. Use their name. And sometimes with their name, I even bold their name. Okay. I would put Manoj in capital MANOJ, comma, and then whatever message that I have. It's even more eye-catching. So Manoj, what do you think you were thinking if you're going to invite them to career services?
Yeah, I was actually like formulating something to say, but then I was just
Subject.
thinking the subject so that after their name I like kind of thinking like what would be strong enough that you're inviting them, but also it seems like more like a request rather than like a promotion kind of thing because like especially for recruiters like they do flag a lot of these messages as well.
Yeah.
And like that's why I was having a hard time like figuring what we could say like to kind
So
of
what
stand
would
out.
you have said? You just described it. I want to
Yeah.
hear verbatim
Yeah.
what you would have said. So what would you say? So for example, the person's name is Joe. Joe, capital Joe, comma, what are you going to say?
So if they were in, if he or she was a recruiter in Chicago, I would just say like their name, and I would say something like, uh, we have a Chicago-based career fair or something like that, like
Okay,
in verbatim.
we have a Chicago-based career fair. So that's kind of long.
Yeah, yeah,
And you didn't really say a whole lot. Any other
yeah.
tries? Well, Manoj is thinking, anybody else thinking in the background? So Manoj said Joe. it was 7 words. Not very effective.
Yeah, I think. Am I audible?
Go ahead, Ivan.
Yeah, I was thinking like I think for this kind of situation, it's a bit tough. So if you
Well, only tough if you say so.
yeah no if you could build the if you could build on something outside, so it would be much easier to have that
What do you
same
mean? What do you mean?
like so that means if there was a way to use the LinkedIn part.
Actually, there is. I was putting that in the back of my head, but thank you, Ivan. That was my next suggestion. I would research the person on LinkedIn, find something. So it's the same strategies we've been talking about earlier with LinkedIn, right? When you're sending a LinkedIn message, one of the strategies that we said is their profile is chock full of information where you can find background of relatedness, where you can see something really short and catchy to bring their attention in. So very good, Ivan. So to Manoj's point, if I knew that person, because obviously he already has the email, so hopefully he can find their LinkedIn URL and start researching them there. So Manoj, so I think
Yeah.
that would be a much better approach than what you brought up.
Yeah, that makes sense. But like I was just wondering, like I mean, when you have the LinkedIn information, like it kind of makes sense to
Mhm.
like formulate something. But let's say, like in
You
a
don't?
case, like yeah, like for example, like I get a mail like from Career Shift, for example, and in that case, like let's say, uh, it's usually the email format like first name, first letter, and last name, like for
Mhm.
similarly to how we have our Hawk IDs as
Something
well.
just came to mind for me. So I would say Joe, comma, doing anything September 3rd.
Okay, yeah, that makes.
Why do you think that could be effective? I mean, nothing's obviously 100%, but I
Yeah.
think that's better than what you
Yeah.
had in mind, right? You were thinking
Right.
career fair, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I just thought out of the box and I knew the date for the career fair. Let's just assume it was September 3rd. And I just kind of
Yeah.
like jumped into it. So coming from the standpoint of the reader, Joe, it's definitely going to catch my attention. And then it's saying doing something September 3rd. I'd be curious, right? I'd open up that email.
Right. Yeah, that makes, yeah, in that sense it makes, like I was just thinking of formulating for I mean, I've not worked on emails as much. So I was just like formulating in my head first what I would say, like just for practice. So
Mhm.
that's why I was just curious about that. Like in a case that like you don't have the LinkedIn information and like just like something like this, which will like get a response because like for the LinkedIn is kind of like you have some information to go
Mhm.
on. Like
Mhm.
in some I was just thinking about like cases like where you just have their email and don't have like
Mhm.
anything to go on. Yeah,
Mhm.
like this one makes sense. Like I was just like trying to wrap my head around like
Yeah.
what do I say,
So
because I was
what did you
thinking
just
about,
learn? What
yeah,
did you just learn?
I think it's just an expansion of what we are doing on LinkedIn, but it's we are using the same principles essentially, and we are trying, like for example, we are just like name dropping the name and we are name dropping the date of our fair, so that it's like they'll be like, what am I doing? Like at least it makes them curious enough to open the email.
Very good. Because just like in a LinkedIn message, your job is to open the door. So the subject line's job is to for them to click and
Yeah,
read whatever else you have to
right,
say.
right.
Cool. 1257. Any other comments about what we learned today? Questions or anything else?
You guys mentioned a lot of like reading the situation. Is there like any tips to like when's a good time to start changing the conversation into asking for help?
Okay, I'm going to
Like,
answer that with an analogy. Remember the analogy that we made with you being friends?
mhm.
When did you know that the other person was your friend?
After some time.
Well, but there was something specifically, right? It's not like after 5 hours they became your friend. It's not after
Yeah.
2 weeks they became your friend. Something occurred within that time that indicated to you that they're getting friendlier, that you could start considering them a friend. So I say that that was you reading the situation. So it's actually a good question because we haven't spoken about it well, obviously we're a technical university, so I know how people like, the steps to how to get that. Why don't we make it homework actually for this call? We'll talk about it next Wednesday because we're out of time. I'd like you to come up with certain ways as to how you read the situation and that you know that you could proceed to start transitioning and ask about whatever it is that you're asking. But very good question, Dimitri. So we've not addressed that before, I don't think. So we will now, next Wednesday. Very good. Thank you, Dimitri. Anyone else? All right, guys. Thank you for coming to today's call. I guess it's the last business relations for July. Any other questions between now and Wednesday, feel free to send me a message directly on LinkedIn. Otherwise, thank you for your time. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Bali.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Bye-bye, guys.